Thanks for staying with us. The fight to protect voting rights has been at the forefront for the past year and a half, with marches taking place across the country to push back against voter suppression and blocking voter restrictions in almost every state. Some say the history of racial discrimination in voting is alive and well in this 21st century.
We had the same unresolved racial tension, right, between the state and black people and the black community at large. We have the same sort of enfranchisement issues as it pertains to voting. And so, we're out here leading the charge, just wanting to be the last generation to have to carry this fight.
That was activist Ty Hobson Powell, one of the many protesters across the country that has recently faced arrest in the push for voting rights. Well, joining us is also someone who was arrested in that fight for voting rights, your rights, to protect your rights, better yet. Joining us is Tamika Mallory. She's a civil rights activist, also co-founder of Untitled Freedom. She's joining us today to talk about this generation's fight for voting rights. So what Ty said, do you agree with him, Tamika? Is that where we are?
Certainly, and Ty is one of the many amazing organizers across this country that's out there on the battlefield. And certainly, I do agree that unfortunately we're repeating history and having to fight some of the same fights again. We have a major backlash that we see happening in this nation, where people are trying to strip away the rights that so many fought for, that Congressman John Lewis and others actually gave their lives fighting for. And it's our responsibility at this time to make sure that our generation is on record as having gone back to the places and spaces and fighting again.
Well, speaking of fighting again, you are among thousands expected to attend the March on Voting Rights rally taking place this Saturday to commemorate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s 1963 March on Washington, which during that time was to promote civil and economic rights for African Americans. Tamika, here we are 58 years later, marching for almost the same basic rights. What keeps you energized?
Well, first off, I just want to make sure to give a point of clarification. There are several marches happening in Washington, D.C. on August 28th. The march that I am helping to lead and will be attending is at the Lincoln Memorial, and its name is the Make Good Trouble March. We are following the direction of Congressman John Lewis and making good trouble in Washington, D.C. We've been doing it for several weeks. When you say what keeps me energized, people like Ty, young people who are out there, the Tiffany Loftons and others who are helping us to organize across this nation, they keep me energized because these are younger folks who are out there saying that we will not drop the baton. And I guess the other thing that keeps us organized, keeps me energized, is just the idea that we are in a fight or flight status. Either we fight for our rights or we lose them. And for us, losing our rights means that many of us will die. That's what we have seen over and over again. I am someone who focuses on specifically police accountability. But I understand that our voting rights is the cornerstone of the issues that matter to us, and that I can't get police accountability if I don't have the right to send people to office, and particularly to the federal government, who will protect us on that level. And so I'm energized because I have no other choice. It means life or death for me, literally.
Well, speaking of police accountability, as we both know, the George Floyd Policing Act still stalling, hasn't been passed yet. Your book, State of Emergency, How Do We Win in This Country We Built, is published under Charlemagne the God's publishing company, so keeping it all in the family, which we appreciate here at BNC. Talk about what inspired you to write that book, and how can we all win in the state of emergency as we continue to see restrictive voting bills popping up across the country?
Well, I'll tell you what we can't do is to go home and get comfortable and think that that will help us to win in this battle. We've got to stay on the front lines and stay in the faces of those individuals who have the power to protect us and to make a difference. We can't go to Washington on Saturday, August 28th, and say that we're there because we're upset with just one party, or we're just going to address the Republicans. We have to be willing to step and stand in the faces of Democrats as well, as high up as President Joe Biden, and say that we demand that the promises that have been made to our communities during election time, that those promises will be upheld. And so in State of Emergency, my book, I talk about keeping the pressure on and not allowing ourselves to get caught up in the euphoria of having a Black woman as vice president, having a new president, and to believe that somehow that means our conditions are going to be changed. We have a responsibility to demand from them, from all the Democrats in both the Congress and the Senate, that they do for us what they promise. And that is to ensure that there is federal legislation passed to protect our rights. And we want to see the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which, by the way, in my judgment, and many other activists and leaders have said, it is a moderate bill. It still does not include much of what we need to really ensure that there's accountability, but it's a stepping stone. And we want to see that bill pass. And right now, it's not happening. And we believe that going to Washington on August 28th is not just about voting rights, but it is about all our issues, including DC statehood, including reparations. And so we will be there and hoping that folks join us at the Lincoln Memorial as well.
Yeah, and Tamika, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, the bill, it's just basic. It bans chokeholds. It creates a database for bad cops so they can't go to the next police department and get a job. So why not pass it? What do you think?
Yeah. Absolutely. And to be clear, when you talk about that chokeholds piece, again, that's important because Breonna Taylor's mother, Tamika Palmer, will be joining us this Saturday in Washington, D.C. And she's saying, listen, we need federal legislation, not she's jumping around from state to state. We're in different places. Legislators are trying to introduce local legislation. Why can't we pass the chokehold bill, the ban on chokeholds across the country and just stop that immediately? Again, as you said, it is basic. It is very moderate. And there's no reason why it's not getting done, except the fact that we are, that our elected officials, that those people in positions of power are leaning too hard towards police unions and others who don't want to see accountability.
Yeah. Tamika, what inspired your activism? Where did this all come from?
You know, my parents are still activists. They are in their 70s. And they are still out there on the front lines. They are not in front of the camera. They pushed me to do that because I've always been a very talkative person. And when I was young, they said, you run that mouth so much, we got to get you someplace where you can run it for good. And that's what I've been doing in this movement. But my parents started me out over 25 years ago, taking me to rallies and getting me engaged. And as life's trials and tribulations have happened to me, including my son's father was shot and killed 20 years ago. So it's been 22 years that I've been raising a young Black man on my own, navigating through these systems and through the fears of having a young Black man growing up in this country. And I haven't been able to stop. It's where I'm supposed to be. And it doesn't mean that I don't get frustrated sometimes and want to go figure out if I can, find a different job. But I'm always brought right back to this space because I believe that this is what God wants me to do.
Absolutely. And speaking of where God wants you, I want you to listen to some sound.
Arrest the cops. Right. Charge the cops. Right. Charge all the cops. Not just some of them, not just here in Minneapolis. Charge them in every city across America. That is who you are, Daniel Cameron. You are a coward. You are a sellout, and you were used by the system. Country is supposed to be about the land of the free for all. It has not been free for Black people, and we are tired. Don't talk to us about looting. Y'all are the looters.
You are our voice, and I mean it's powerful, and it resonated through me every time I hear you. Your voice is just so powerful. What was going through your mind at that moment? Do you remember?
Well, first of all, thank you, my dear sister, for saying that it resonates with you. You know, what was going through my mind is I really don't care what happens. They'll probably, blackball me because of my words, which I've experienced that already. And I just said I have to tell the truth. I didn't want to plan my speech. People who know me and folks who work on my team, they know that whenever I have a big speech to make, I spend the night before really preparing and trying to make sure that I'm getting it right. But I didn't prepare. In both of these occasions, when, speaking, I just spoke from my heart. I said what I believe was true. And obviously, it resonated with people all over the world because I hear it every single day. And I believe that that only comes from God. To your point about, where God would have me, he had me in those spaces, in those moments, and I spoke truth to power. And I'm grateful that I was given the opportunity to be a voice and a vessel in those moments.
Yeah, you are more than a voice and a vessel. You are the movement. And we appreciate you and everything that you
God,
do.
the movement is so big, and you are a part of it by helping to bring these stories to life on TV every day. So thank you so much for what you do as well.
I appreciate that.